Anyway, let's move on and look at today's papers. Delighted to say Julian Drucker joins us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, David. Someone's tweeted about your shirt. I'm just saying, nice floral shirt. It wasn't me. Is spring on the way, they ask.
Yes.
Well, it is.
What's wrong with my shirt?
It's they're complimenting you on your shirt.
I see it.
Nice.
And what did you come as? Country casual?
It's certainly not as floral, is it?
It isn't. It's missing sleeves as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, should we move on to the papers?
Yes.
What do you have for us first?
So, Matt Hancock, day 4, front page of the Telegraph. Not the famous photo of him with his now partner, Gina. You know, the famous photo from The Sun. I suppose they'd have to pay for that photo. Instead, a photo of him on I'm a Celebrity. But, obviously, these, as you've been discussing, these WhatsApps today about when it came out about his affair, this sort of 41 hours, I think it was on a Thursday morning it broke, wasn't it? And then on the Saturday afternoon, he resigned. They were trying to find an excuse to justify keeping him in his job. Obviously, these WhatsApps continue to be fascinating. And today in the Telegraph, just about how they try to find some sort of way through the chicanery of because it is hard to remember what the rules were at the time.
100%. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? That headline, inside Matt Hancock's 41-hour scramble to save his career. I mean, clearly, when they got wind of this, they then tried and scurried around to try and find a way to justify his actions, given the rules at that time. And I think it became increasingly clear there wasn't a way round that.
Absolutely. If you hear him speaking now, when he was in I'm a Celebrity, he always says he didn't break the rules.
But he did.
Well, he did. Legal restrictions which criminalised indoor meetings of 2 or more people from different households were not lifted until May the 17th. This happened, the famous photo was early May, wasn't it? What is interesting is what we now know, it could put pressure on the Met Police to investigate whether they broke COVID laws. I mean, he would only get a fixed penalty notice if...
Well, I mean, the extraordinary thing is his team, obviously the team was then pushed into action to try and work out how to deal with this, the crisis team, I think it was called. And his team believed the trickiest issue was the fact that he'd been having an affair whilst the government had banned people from hugging their own grandchildren. I mean, it's despicable.
The fact that they weren't clear about their own rules, they're asking, what are the rules exactly? Is there a way around this? All of that. But also, it's just so blatantly obvious. If we are banned from hugging family members, and there is a person who is not it wasn't his wife, we know that. I'm not throwing shade on the affair. It's his business. But that was in a workplace setting, and those photographs clearly show that.
He sort of laughed about... I remember he was interviewed on Sky News by Kay Burley, and he was sort of laughing because she was asking about relationships and casual relationships, and he was sort of laughing about the possibility of that being a question to him, because it was something they never really spoke about in these press conferences. It was always about families and individuals. So, he never really spoke about it that much at the time, and I guess... he hoped that people would sort of forget that.
He thought the worst the media could say was they kissed before they legalised hugs. We're talking about serious, as you were saying, David, there are people who were dying alone in hospital, people dying alone in care homes.
I mean, it is extraordinary, just in terms of they looked at the exceptions to the ban, and they then said, well, is this gathering reasonably necessary for work purposes? One would argue that close physical contact really isn't work purpose.
It really isn't. And I think if you just step back a minute, it just shows how they took the public for fools. I mean, this is ridiculous. Any sane person... Well, I think the rules were ridiculous, but any sane person can see... It's like the photos of Boris... Sorry, but the photos of him having a booze up. I don't care that he was having drinks and nibbles at work, but the fact is that was not a socially distanced work gathering. Don't take the mickey when everybody else was... I remember going to Christmas at my big sister's and having to go round the back of the garden fence and climb over the wall.
Well, I think a lot of people did that, didn't they?
Of course they did.
As the restrictions became even more draconian, people thought, I'm just not doing this.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a very fine balance between the mental well-being of family members, particularly the elderly, being left and isolated when they cancelled Christmas. I mean, it was just unacceptable.
And the fact that we were having serious conversations as adults about you could be my bubble and I'll be your bubble.
Well, yeah,
and
absolutely,
just, don't...
And there was the fear as well for lots of people.
Fear.
You know, you kind of forget that when you see these WhatsApps and photos now. Well, I mean, people were frightened, weren't they?
I was talking about this yesterday on breakfast. You know, I flew back from, I think I must have had a vaccine by then, I can't really recall, but I flew back from Spain, and the next thing I know, I get pinged, and then Test and Trace literally tried to barge down the door of my house. Now, my mum had come round to bring me food. She hid behind the chimney in this country.
Right.
It is absolutely shocking, isn't it, to think of that. I remember driving with my elderly mother across London with a brand new baby, having this conversation, what do we say? What do we say if the police stop us? Like, why are we're in London. Yeah. Why are we justifying that we are driving across London?
That's it. Well, those police
in a
vans.
Car, alone.
Do you remember the police vans like 3 years ago at the end of this month I remember seeing a clip around Shepherd's Bush Green, you know, loud hailers telling people to go indoors. I mean, it is mad to look at those clips.
It is mad.
Now,
and justifying why you are going to the shops in this country.
Yeah. But it's also about what we allowed them to do, the fear they instilled in people and what they then were allowed to get away with. I mean, it's a really interesting lesson.
It's a case study in...
It really is.
I know, in much darker stuff, actually.
In terms of control. Matt Hancock's just issued a statement, actually. A spokesperson for Matt Hancock has said, it is outrageous that this distorted account of the pandemic is being pushed with partial leaks spun to fit an anti-lockdown agenda, which would have cost hundreds of thousands of lives if followed. What the messages do show is a lot of people working hard to save lives. The story spun on care homes is completely wrong. What the messages show is that Mr. Hancock pushed for testing of those going into care homes when that testing was available. That is not my understanding of what the evidence has shown.
So he's referring to the initial things on Thursday, isn't he? Yeah.
Let's be very clear about this, because basically, and I did this on the first day, whenever that first day was, on the 1st of March, which was, there was a big discussion about, and I think the CMO, the Chief Medical Officer, said that those from the community must be tested before they go into care homes, as well as hospitals. They didn't do that. They only tested those going from hospital. And Hancock was involved.
And he's saying there just weren't enough tests available.
He is saying it's because there weren't enough tests.
Yes.
Well, it might have been also because, Mr. Hancock, you had your 100,000 target, didn't you?
You had your target,
anyway,
and that was your obsession.
I'll leave that for the minute. Shall we move on to the Mail?
Because interesting, though, that statement that he's hitting back now. Because it's war between him and Isabel Oakeshott, and they're both saying they know stuff about each other. It's going to be a bit explosive.
Well, and also my understanding is there is a lot more still to come.
To come out.
A lot more.
Sunday tomorrow, the big one. So
exactly.
what are they
tomorrow will be a big
exactly.
one. And the question is, what on earth is coming next? Let's move on, because this is about Boris Johnson. Yes. This also links into the COVID story.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so this is this came out yesterday, the Commons Partygate inquiry. They released this 24-page report yesterday, and this is ahead of him giving evidence on the 20th of March.
Which is going to be another really explosive one. It's going to be televised a couple of weeks away.
Absolutely. I mean, they released these new photos yesterday, but people will think they've already seen them before because they're very similar to what has come before. So it's more Partygate stuff. This photo yesterday, if people didn't see it, was from January 2021. You see him at a table where there's sort of cake and carver on it. What is interesting, obviously, you know, this evidence he's going to give, and then potentially, if he gets suspended from the Commons as a result of that, there could be a recall petition in Uxbridge, his constituency. That could force him to then have to have a by-election. So, you know, it could rule him out of being...
I mean, this picture is Boris Johnson in a room with booze. Yes. Isn't it?
Well, and also the front of the there's a picture on the we don't have the Independent because it's digital. Do we've got the digital?
Well,
we've got the eye. The Independent digital has got a photo of him at a fairly rowdy party. Actually, everybody's holding a drink in an office, fairly crowded. And that was November 2020, and at that party he said, "Oh, this must be the most unsocially distanced gathering in the UK." So
he said exactly
and the report that came out last night. The 23-page report, this interim from the Public Liaison Committee, whatever they're called, is saying... the Privileges Committee is saying it was obvious to anyone. It would have been obvious to him that he was breaking the rules. So they are really, there's almost no doubt.
I mean, they've said there are 4 ways they believe Johnson had misled the Commons. Now, obviously, misleading the Commons is a very serious offence indeed, as Julian rightly says. Of course, he could be suspended. That could lead to him actually facing a by-election in that constituency. Boris Johnson fighting for his political life, Matt Hancock fighting for his political life. I'd also argue, actually, Rishi Sunak to some degree also, but actually he seems to come out of this rather better.
Yes,
so far.
And he can step aside because it's, you know, it's the old regime, although he may be
he was very much in it.
Yes, yeah. But, you know, Boris...
He was in it, but there isn't a... shame, though, for Rishi Sunak, because he was having quite a good week. Finally,
we'll talk about that in a minute.
Well, I know, and I know you don't much rate the deal, but finally he was kind of getting his ducks back in a row after all the scandals falling apart, and now this again, which I think is good for Labour. But we'll discuss that.
It's the story of Boris Johnson. He's not going to become leader again.
So he's going to mess it up for everyone else.
You know, is he going to continue as an MP,
or is he?
Well, I mean,
I wouldn't count him out.
In opposition, the Tories in opposition would probably need someone like him. But the idea of him being Prime Minister again...
I think the grassroots like him.
Well, they still like him.
Of course they do, but I still think this comeback stuff is probably for the birds. I think he's a yesterday's man.
And he tried the comeback back in, you know, whenever it was.
Also, look, he's making $5 million jetting around the world doing public speaking. Would you exchange that for Oxbridge? No, you know, no offence to Oxbridge. Don't text him. But, you know.
No, Oxbridge is a very nice place, by the way.
He's pretending that this report he says it totally vindicates me. What? What report is he reading?
Right. OK, well, let's move on now to Sue Gray, because, of course, this is really interesting. Sue Gray was obviously this very important civil servant, was meant to be independent. Clearly not that independent if she's joining Keir Starmer.
Absolutely. A Sue Gray delay, potentially. She could face a longer wait, according to the Times, to start this job at the Labour Party if she's found to have damaged perceptions of civil service impartiality. So it's the Advisory Committee on Business Appointments is going to apparently look at whether, you know, her taking this job would compromise the reputation of the civil service. I think lots of civil servants, and you've been speaking to some of them as well, you know, they find it awkward, they find it slightly embarrassing that she's taken this role. They are supposed to be impartial. It's the speed with which this new job has landed in her lap, isn't it? I think if it was 5 years down the line, it would be perhaps different. And
the fact that there are reports that they've been chatting, she and Sir Keir Starmer have been chatting for a few months now, that she's just completed her Partygate inquiry, that she's now taking up, if it's confirmed, she's taking up one of the most overtly political roles, Sir Keir Starmer's right-hand woman, as we go into a general election.
Absolutely.
That's not just any other job. I don't care if she takes 3 months gardening leave. That's still... pretty interesting move.
I mean, Starmer's defence is we're positioning ourselves for government, therefore we need someone who is sound, who is experienced. I agree with you. I think it stinks.
I think it stinks. There's no suggestion that she's done anything wrong, but I think it looks like Labour is in her DNA. And that she has the secrets. She has all the insider. She's been at the heart of government. She was the head of propriety and ethics. She was the one grilling people on conflicts of interest.
Did she find any ethics in government? No.
Ethics was that?
So Julian, just in terms of the delay, my understanding is this has to go to Rishi Sunak, doesn't it, to sign it off?
Yes. I mean, it could mean, you know, potentially, it doesn't give a time frame. It could be, you know, she might have to wait a year before. Actually, between 3 months and 2 years. This garden, I mean, her garden's going to look amazing.
I know. I wouldn't mind 2 years gardening leave. Yeah. I bet they get gardening leave on full pay as well.
Of course they do.
2 years, imagine that.
Amazing. It also says...
like furlough.
She had felt, quote, overlooked, it says in the Times, as Rishi Sunak reorganised the structures of government. So, you know, it was only a year ago that obviously she was doing her report. And yeah, she felt overlooked, and that is why she
had a taste for power, and she wanted a bit more.
But no wonder there's such a disconnect. This is one of my big bugbears about there is such a disconnect between the general public and politicians, and people saying I'm not going to vote, and this just makes it all worse, doesn't it?
There's been lots of debates, hasn't there? You know, do people care about this story? Is it a bubble story? But actually, you know, people I've spoken to do care about this, and it is, you know, it's the sniff test, isn't it? People feel as if the revolving door between, you know, the civil service and politics is constantly being used. And she's 65, isn't she? So I guess there's a potential she wanted one last job before retiring, hence the speed with which she's taken taken up this new job, but who knows?
Interesting. OK, let's move on to Rishi Sunak and banning migrants.
This is really interesting. So there's potentially, again, according to the Times, could be an announcement in the next few days from Rishi Sunak. Him and Suella Braverman apparently going to reveal legislation in the next few days that will make all asylum claims from those who come to the UK on small boats inadmissible. So basically people would come here and then not almost immediately, but would be sent back. There would be no grounds to appeal or to claim asylum. It would go down well with lots of people. But it's the backlog, isn't it? There are already 160,000 migrants sort of waiting on decisions. I don't know how he can get through the numbers so quickly.
I said yesterday, apparently the average caseworker manages to process one case a week, and there are 170,000 backlog. So you work out how many years that will take to process that backlog. I mean, the whole thing's absolutely ridiculous. Meanwhile, they've decimated town centres by taking over hotels. We've heard about people frightened to go out at night. We've heard about restaurants not being able to operate because obviously people aren't going there. Interestingly, also, there's another story this morning about channel migrants who arrive in the UK can be prosecuted for illegal entry to the UK. This is under new powers. This is Britain's most senior judge ruling. Very interesting. So this is going to be a huge electoral issue. We know it is. People are furious about what's going on, particularly in places like Dover, for example, Folkestone and so on. And so Rishi Sunak knows, and it's a little bit like your comment, Emma, saying Rishi Sunak thought he's getting his ducks in a row. If he pulls this off... Yeah. That will be a win.
It will. Is he going to do this? This legislation that he's going to announce next week with the Home Secretary, is he allowed to do this, or is he going to be blocked?
Yes.
It'll be blocked by the House of Lords.
This is when it's frustrated, then, that potentially plays in his favour, doesn't it? Because it shows that he's trying to do something. That would be,
I completely agree that it would be a huge win for him electorally, but I just feel that he's not going to be able to get
I wonder what
with
they do with this, because they know it's such a hot potato. So obviously it will probably pass the Commons, then it will go to the Lords and get revised and sent back, and we'll play ping pong. And it just depends how much he believes this is the ultimate issue. I think it's pretty much up there with the NHS.
It's one of his 5 pledges, isn't it?
Yeah.
In the run-up to it could be his #1 pledge. It's so sort of visible and visceral. He has to be seen to be doing something on this. But all of those numbers of people coming in, all of those hotels will still be full up, and we would need to see pictures of people being sent back, and if if it ends up in the High Court, etc., then people will think, well, nothing's changed.
I mean, Rwanda, what happened to that?
Well, exactly.
No planes.
Yeah, no,
still
I
not
feel
happening.
like he and Suella Braverman have talked tough a lot for months and months and months and got nowhere with it.
I think she really does mean business. I think her feeling is she's thwarted by everyone, and the fact is that the great and the good and the establishment are all against her as well. But so this could be a very interesting development.
Exactly.
Let's see. So the coronation, Julian.
Yes, the big one in May.
Have you got an invite yet?
I haven't yet.
I love the fact the coronation, they're sending out save the date cards. as if you need to save the date. If you get an invite to the coronation, you're going. You don't, need a save-the-date card and then you wait for your invite. Maybe not. Oh, I'll pencil it in my diary.
Every day I'm there going like that. Here's my invite.
Look, if you didn't get an invite to the party
I didn't even go to a party.
Then you and I were not invited to the coronation.
I think I'll be here, won't I?
I bet Renee will. Renee will be there in her glittery gold dress.
Yeah, well, she better not be. There'll be all sorts of trouble if that happens. So the coronation, so the oil.
We've had Coronation Chicken, Coronation Street, and now Coronation Oil. Chrism oil, also known as myrrh. It's
is it myrrh?
It's vegan.
Basically,
vegan
it's
oil.
vegan oil.
Yeah, good man.
Back in 1953, this was the bit of the service they didn't televise. This is the really sacred bits where the Queen was anointed with oil. It's not clear if they're going to show that this time, but this is the oil in question. But it's just, we're starting to read more and more
But where's
stories.
it come from? That's the bit that's really
This has come from Jerusalem. This has been filmed, the consecration ceremony. People can watch it online. All very interesting. But
I think it really is interesting.
It is interesting. This is the sort of stuff we've never seen before.
Well, so this morning I was listening to people in Jerusalem talking about this, and I was thinking, this really is a global phenomena, actually. And for me, that's really important, this sacred part of the coronation, because it's pledging allegiance not only to the country, but also to God, to the crown, to everything. I mean, there is so much symbolism here, and the fact that it's coming from Jerusalem really blew my mind this morning.
Absolutely. It contains sesame, cinnamon. I mean, it sounds delicious, doesn't it? on top of a latte or something. But yeah, this is a really...
I'm not invited.
But as I said, we're hearing lots more about the logistics of the coronation. I think you were saying the other day about in Rolling Stone, this report, some of the big stars apparently don't want to appear. Adele, Harry Styles and Elton, because...
Well, I think they've got previous bookings, though. That was my understanding.
Apparently, but it's just this idea that he doesn't have the same pull as his mother, and they're going to find it harder to fill this concert.
I think that's really surprising. I think that that just like we were reminded when the Queen died, because we go on and on and on about this country's falling apart, and it's just amazing to see how this country shut down for 2 weeks during the period of national mourning, but the whole world wanted to was involved and was reporting on it, and people were visiting from all over the world. And I think the coronation in May is going to be it's going to be an international event.
It really will be.
Yeah. It's a time for once that we can be proud of this.
I just wish there were more people going, actually. And of course, we were talking about when the Queen was the Queen's coronation was that they actually packed people in, and of course, under health and safety, you can't do that anymore. You can't put up scaffolding in quite the same way and have people hanging off the rafters.
Well, Windsor's just not as big a location as Buckingham Palace, is it? If they're going to have a concert, but not long now, and you can await your invitation.
Well, it's also my birthday that weekend.
Oh, is it?
Well, not that weekend, but
May. What is it? So you're Taurus.
I am a Taurus. Yeah, Taurus the bull by name and by nature.
Explains a lot.
Thank you, Julian. You won't be invited back. Oh no, Julian. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Very nice to see you. Thank you very much indeed for that. Right, time for a quick break. After the break, we'll go through all of this morning's sporting headlines. I'll be joined by Tom Clayton. This is TalkTV.